So it seems like over the last 7 days or more, the name of the game has been leaky faucets, dripping pipes, and all kinds of hacks.
Cybersecurity is important.
The types of hacks that like usually occur in games are the ones like the story that came out about the Nintendo employee's kid who was behind the Smash Brothers 3DS roster leaks. Someone worked at Nintendo and they had their son was able to access the files that showed off who was going to be in the Smash Bros.
Because they left their laptop open at home.
And, that, of course, led to them sharing with their friends, which led to their friends then going and posting about it online. And from
My dad works at Nintendo.
literally from my dad works at Nintendo to 4chan to then it spreads. And unfortunately, that once the Nintendo figures that out, that person gets fired because, of course, that's what happens, right?
Mm-hmm.
That is usually the way we kind of find out about these things, and you're like, oh wow, that's some wild news, here's some artwork of the characters or whatever's going on. Of course, the difference between that and the
and literally every single thing we're going to talk about now
is the part where the motives of the people involved aren't necessarily to just drop these, hey, did you know that Little Mac is going to be in Smash Brothers? It's like actual criminals who are putting out passport information for people who work at Insomniac, for example.
They're like, hey, you know what you should do? We have all this information. You should just pay us millions of dollars, and then we'll give it back to you.
So something like this happened to Capcom last year, I think it was, and the result of that was just like, yeah, you're hearing about some announcements and trailers and footage for things because essentially they get their servers compromised. The hackers basically exfiltrate gigs and gigs of the entire server, lock it down so that they can't access the intranet. And then, there's a Bitcoin ransom essentially. And then they'll show up samples of their data to show you like, here's what we have access to and stuff. And they will return it to you. And every single time, those files don't just include, the games that you're talking about, but it also includes passport information, full doxing of people's and ruining of people's lives potentially out to the public, So that happened to Insomniac as well. And if you've been hearing about, things about the Wolverine game or the fact that, Sunset Overdrive only made like $500 or whatever the case is, it's all because it's packed inside there with this other like life-ruining shit that these hackers have been putting out there as they're trying to extort Insomniac. Yeah, it's just like with the Capcom thing. It's like I think there's a general, there's a vibe you get that everyone's kind of aware of where they're like, oh, it's not like, yay, oh, yeah, cool, fun video game leaks, but when people's lives are being fucking destroyed because of like passport docs and social insurance numbers and all that coming out, it's like those things are not being treated the same way. The rumors are not really being like, hey, everyone, go check out those files and download them and be sure to go look and see for yourself that footage because these are people that are fucking having to scramble to save what they can of their security and their privacy. And that shit's fucking garbage every time. And of course, there's also the thing where you never know, like, does paying off this ransom actually lead to you getting your shit back, or are they gonna, would they just put it out anyway?
If they feel like it is the answer.
Yeah. So some, some say that like the Somali pirate code is they honor their hostages because or they honor their hostage deals because if you actually break the rules, then no one else will be willing to pay you ever again. So the whole ransom only works if you actually give people the thing or whatever. But you never fucking know, man. You literally never know.
I don't know, man. That always assumes the people who are committing felonies for profit are thinking multiple steps ahead to their future in, of course, committing more felonies for profit.
Not just the short-sighted, impulsive nature of what it is. But yeah, that's basically what happened with Insomniac. And then from that, they're led directly to the Rockstar stuff as well, because the Rockstar one gets even more nuts because that was a leak that happened a while ago. In particular, there was the so okay, there's two parts to this. One, the source code for GTA 5 apparently
that's the new leak
is currently happening alongside GTA 6 Python code as well as Bully 2 files. People were able to confirm that they canceled 8 DLCs for GTA 5 and a bunch of other stuff that was a part of that.
Yeah, no, they canceled Bully 2, they canceled 8 GTA 5 DLCs and something else. So they could do GTA Online.
GTA Online was more profitable than working on the extended campaigns and such.
One of those was GTA Tokyo.
Well, that means dollars to dollars and cents to cents, man. If GTA Online is where role players are currently fucking spending bank to keep that shit online, then they're going to keep their workforce pushed towards that service than the single player shit, you know? Like, yeah, they just redirected all their efforts from that, so it would seem. But the wilder part of this from before was the guy who released the GTA 6 trailer. Like, so what we saw was like, oh, GTA 6 trailer is online. Someone hacked it. Someone hacked in and was able to get it off their servers. And then they basically responded by releasing it officially within an hour or two, right? Just being like, okay, well, fuck it. We're announcing it officially. Yeah. Which is, ultimately that's the response that does make sense, providing that the footage is actually done, although people do always show off these side-by-side comparisons to go like, yeah, here's Red Dead in the trailer, here's Red Dead in the final. Like, it still looks a lot better later on. What then came out afterwards was that the hacker in particular was already on probation, and he leaked and he hacked into Rockstar and leaked that footage when he was out on bail for
hacking NVIDIA
and BTEE, and he was staying at a hotel under police protection, and during that time he managed to carry out the Rockstar hack with an Amazon Fire Stick, a smartphone, a keyboard, and a mouse.
And the TV in his hotel room.
Fucking insane, right? A Fire Stick.
So,
this is then...
This kid is having a time of it.
Yeah.
So, first of all, of note, they're an adult. They're 18 years old, which is why their name is out there. But I don't really feel any particular need to use it. This guy has been sentenced to an indefinite hospital order.
The reasons given are because of apparently he was violent in custody, and and I guess in violating the probation, he continued to indicate that he would continue out cyber attacks and would want to continue doing so again. And
so
such.
there's a. I dug into this a little bit. It's very complicated because the first thing that you see is guy hacked Grand Theft Auto in jail forever.
Yeah,
there is a logic to it, and it's very sad.
I'm curious because in hearing about that sounds like the most fucked up type of thing.
All right, so
to get
first things first, that for some reason it's not being reported in these news stories, but it is like a matter of record. He also stalked women in the past. That's also part of the guy's desire to commit crimes. So he hacked NVIDIA and got caught, and then on bail hacked Rockstar, right? And they then arrested him again, and his bail was revoked. And he got a mental health evaluation because he's got very severe autism. And the question was whether or not he's competent to stand trial. And the answer is, I'm not super sure how the British system works, but he is not competent enough to judge his intent only whether or not he did it. So he was judged guilty as that he did absolutely do it, red-handed. And then in subsequent mental health evaluations, he attacked staff and everybody at the jail and broke a bunch of shit. And then in his evaluation, the way that it is written in these news articles is he expressed a desire to get out of jail and immediately resume his hacking activities.
Right.
Which, judging what I know about like the evaluation of somebody who's on trial and has like an autism diagnosis, likely what happened is they said, "What are you going to do when you get out of jail?" And he said, "I am going to start hacking things again as soon as I am out of jail." And they went, "You can't do that." And he said, "I am going to hack things as soon as I am out of jail."
Yeah.
So,
yeah. So and so the thing is that the way this is worded here is it says he's required to stay in hospital prison for life unless doctors determine that he's no longer a danger. Is this the type of wording that is basically like, is it a matter of there have been other cases like this and typically there is a point at which they go through, I guess, the system and there are doctors that evaluate that they are no longer a danger? Or are there people who have been put under this that have been basically locked up for life and that are still under that? Because I still can't see how like a life sentence is like, that seems insane.
So it's a really strange interaction of the mental health profession and the justice system. So it's like parole, right? So say you get 30 years and you could have parole with good behavior for 15, right? It becomes your job to convince your parole board that you are changed after 15 years so that they go, oh, further attempts at rehabilitation, so further jail time or prison time would be pointless on a societal thing. So we'll let you out early, right? Because there's no reason to keep you in jail, right? This is why it's such a big deal in the justice system that people admit and take responsibility for their guilt in the parole system. Because if you won't even admit that you did it, you obviously haven't come to terms with it, so we can't parole you, which obviously falls apart if the person actually didn't do it. You now have to perform a like contrition for something that you didn't do because you were wrongfully convicted. Yada, yada, yada. The mental health system is similar. There are people who are very mentally ill. And if you are determined that you had a schizophrenic episode or a bipolar manic episode, and that caused you to crash your car through the wall of your ex-girlfriend's house, right? They're going to sit you down and evaluate you, and they're going to be like, listen, you know you have to take your pills so that you don't crash your car through your ex-girlfriend's house. And if the answer that comes back is, I fucking hate taking my pills, I'm never going to take my pills, then letting them out of the mental hospital means you are essentially just rolling the dice every single day as to whether or not they're going to do something crazy.
Right. So is there, I guess if the idea is that like the beginning steps of rehabilitation in this case like aren't necessarily going to work because the person is not even remotely close to accepting that part of it. And if there's nothing you can do besides keep them away from the things they will use, I guess, to, well, if we're talking about like shit like stalking added to it as well, which I didn't know about, that's another dynamic that is directly endangering other people beyond just hacking and whatnot, which so takes another level of gravity for certain.
That this guy is part of a hacking group that does like extortion hacking. Like this isn't just, haha, I found video game information. It's the personal information ransom shit that we were describing earlier. But so it is real damage to real people.
But I think the eyebrow raise at the incarcerated for life kind of sentence is warranted, given that it's like
there's a fun by fun, I mean like kind of depressing, but goofy variation to this. So if you happen to be, if you get to dodge the criminal justice system and instead interact with the mental health system during your sentencing, i.e., I had a fugue state, I went through a manic episode, I was in the middle of a schizoid break, I was suffering from dissociative identity disorder at the time, etc., right? You're going to be moved out of culpability and into treatment, but treatment can last forever, right? Mm-hmm. So much like convincing your parole board mm-hmm. that you're rehabilitated, it now becomes your responsibility to convince your doctors that you're no longer crazy, or at least no longer crazy enough to commit crimes. This has a very unfortunate side effect for guys like this in particular, because if he has severe autism and he's hacking all the time, he probably has a fairly pronounced social deficit, which means him lying to his doctor is going to be a lot harder than the average person.
Yeah, so I guess the question is, right, if the term is not for life, but if it's indefinite, right, as being specified, is there going to be a situation where the person is like not any better, and we fast forward a couple of years and they're still go inside the system here? Is there a point where they're, you know, the doctors and caretakers that are involved with them eventually move them into something that is like not quite fully incarcerated, but you have perhaps no access to computers or things that you would use to further perpetrate, but there's still
it's complicated in this particular instance because if you read it carefully, he's not in a mental hospital. He's in the hospital ward of the prison, which is different because the reason why he's not in a psychiatric facility, which sucks, but is instead in the hospital ward of the prison, which sucks way worse, is because he attacked all those people while in processing and in jail.
Yeah.
Trying to convince your once every 6 months shrink that comes to evaluate you that you're not going to commit crimes when you're receiving no treatment in prison, he's not going anywhere. Probably not.
Yeah, I guess it just, you know, that I understand how the like insane specific nature of this creates a situation that seems like you can't begin to really fix the issue. It's just the bottom line ends up going back to but does that result in his life being taken away, right?
Yeah, probably.
You know,
part of getting out of jail is telling people you're not going to commit crimes anymore.
And if this is something that happens in the UK, like, because this is a particular to there, I'm like, what's the precedent for this like, and are there other versions of it that like you can see similar examples before with like what indefinite usually kind of turns into? But
I would say that this guy's best shot at actually getting out of jail is to acclimate to his current situation so that he's not having violent outbursts, at which point he might be able to be transferred to a psychiatric facility and then stay there long enough that he gets released on budget cuts to that psychiatric facility.
Christ almighty.
That I genuinely think that is his best shot at getting out of jail.
That's fucking disgusting. And yeah, the version of it where you increase the again, you introduce stalking and like again the violent nature of everything that was being reported there into the situation changes how particularly bad you're going to feel for someone who's like that, right? It's just, what's the, you know, yeah, is there a point where they kind of go like, well, there's not much we can do here, like shut the key, turn and forget about it, or introduce something to be like, all right, you have somewhat of a life, but you are not able to access any technology or people that you can harm in this way, and or figure out the part of it that, you know, I don't know.
I'm gonna say that if this guy is being classified as non-culpable by a British court and their psychiatric system, because of his autism, then it's probably pretty severe. And if that's the case, I don't think this guy's ever going to want to stop hacking because it's what he's interested in.
And I guess the end result ends up being a question of like, can that result? Because I guess the thought is when you're in prison for life, usually it's over like a murder or something along the lines of where the consequences are basically like in some cases it'd be capital punishment, right? But if something like this can through a series of like weird side doors end up being effectively life imprisonment, I mean that seems wild.
It's one of those
extreme
things that it was like a kind of a joke in like the 90s of like this is the plot of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, which is, hey, saying you're crazy and you did it because you were crazy to not go to prison can have horrific bad side effects because the mental health system has no need to allow you to leave ever because their criteria are not like punitive, they're rehabilitatory, but that once you become institutionalized either in an asylum, in the military, or once you become enraptured in what's called a total institution. Are you familiar with the term?
I mean, I'm familiar with being institutionalized, but
so a total institution is a societal construct that will define every single thing about your entire way of life. So the three most common are the military, a prison, and a mental hospital. Right? Okay. So every single thing about your life is going to be defined by other people, and it's going to be prescribed, right? Once you become totally institutionalized in one of these perspectives, every single thing you do is now going to be viewed through the lens of somebody who's institutionalized. So, for example, back before a bunch of asylums got shut down in the United States, you could take a video camera down and they'd be like, oh, Jimmy's crazy. Why is he crazy? Well, all he does is get naked and stamp his feet all day in his room and yell. And then you look deeper into this gentleman. It's like, oh, the staff is abusive and they don't feed him. And every time he acts out, they take away his clothes and he's in a completely bare room suffering from a schizophrenic episode. So yeah, all he has the power to do is stamp his feet. They go, well, he's totally lost his mind. He's crazy. Like, that dude's just in a pit, man. What do you expect him to do? So once you become stuck in the crazy house, it gets really hard to convince people you're not crazy. Because they go to work and they're like, I'm going to deal with the crazy people. And they're all trying to tell you that they're not crazy so they can leave.
Damn, though, did you see that alligator walking into the 7-Eleven? That was crazy.
Holy shit, that's crazy.
I can't believe it. I can't wait for GTA 6, man. Damn, what a game. Florida, it's happening. Back to Vice City we go. Wow. Look at that.
But yeah, no, it's a sad situation, but I don't know what other possible options there are at all.
Yeah, it's fucked that like you can sideways and end up in something like that where it's like it's the way the system is, and it's like sure, but if like it would be great if there was a way where you couldn't like have a sideways life sentence that is not a life sentence, but it's just a matter of the checks and balances have led to one where you are effectively living out a de facto life sentence despite not being
because like this guy
right,
he's too unstable to be housed in the regular mental hospital, but he needs treatment which he can't get at the prison, and you can't put him in the prison because he's not legally culpable.
Yeah, each step
serve out a sentence.
Each step checks out. Each step I follow every step, and we still end at the same result, which is like that's fucked up. Like I get it. Yep, checks out. That's still nuts, you know.
So the only thing you can say is that, like, at least this guy's particular need is to hack shit and not like blow up buildings or set fires.
Yeah. Again, if you're talking about, you know, not punitive sentencing, more so focused on rehabilitation, and then it's like, okay, rehabilitation is not possible. Like,
yeah, no. Hey, man, guess what? The phrase rehabilitation is not possible becomes incredibly ethically complex.
Yes. Do you hit a point where the system has a sense of like, well, it would not be correct to leave this person indefinitely jailed, and at the same time they have done enough harm that they need to be kept away from society for the society's safety, for what they do? And is there a version of an in-between that is once again a house arrest with no access to technology, or you know, are there different steps you can go to where you pull it back from the idea that the person is literally in a cell forever? That is
that's definitely gonna, you know, improve their mental health.
So I don't know, and obviously not equipped to fucking look to give you further answers on how the UK system does it, but
yeah, I don't know much about the UK system, but I am under the impression that they're fairly strict, at least compared to the Canadian system.
That was a double take and a half when that update came in. I was like, holy shit, like, this dude is super fucked up, but also like, what the fuck with that?
Yeah, and then you know, every country has its different system, and they're all fairly interesting in their own ways. Like I think it was Sweden. There's like mandatory maximums that are like fairly low, but a judge has to let you out. Like, you must go through the country's parole system.
Meanwhile, Capcom and Nintendo are like, so you're not going to execute him out back then? You're saying that you have him and you're not going to take his life?
Just execute him. Yeah, no.
I guess if you want to pay for the food for multiple years.
There's a lot of looky-loos sitting inside Virtua Cop cabinets at the bottom of the Tokyo Bay.
Just in the bottom of the cabinet and dropped in, sunk to the... Yeah. Perfect. God. So yeah, that was the particular fucking insane one there. But leaks left and right. Besides all the leaks, we have some nice wholesome news. We got some good news.
Oh, well, before we move on from the leaks, there is some information contained therein that is of note to people in this field. Not in terms of like, hey, do you want to look at this Wolverine gameplay?
Yeah.
I mean, in the Slack messages of Insomniac people going, boy, we're wasting a shit ton of money on this Spider-Man game. What the fuck is going on at Sony? In particular, there was like the spreadsheets about what games cost and how much they're expected to make back. And devs describing how, like, we spent over 3 times as much on Spider-Man 2 as we did on Spider-Man 1, and I don't think any of the customers can tell the difference.
Wasn't the conclusion effectively that any attempt to run their own IP was doomed to fail, so from now on they have to be the Marvel company?
Well, that's because Ratchet and Clank lost money.
And Sunset Overdrive broke even.
Yeah.
Literally.
I think Spider-Man 1 cost like 10 times as much as Sunset Overdrive, though. And so now they're talking about like splitting games into 2 parts to sell for $50 to somehow help the budget. And it later came out in an interview that like a bunch of missions in Spider-Man 2 near the end got cut so that they could keep the Mary Jane missions, which I will say is that was the wrong decision. Whoever had the final say on that was a bad move. And basically it's just like people internal to Sony going like, we are spending so much goddamn money and our projections are so high that if we do anything other than sell like a long tail of 20 million, the fucking studio's gonna go under.
Well, if you cut a $50 game into 2 purchases of $50, I mean, really, you can. Why do that when you could just go for the Sony 2027 plan for just getting games right up to $100?
You know, there's a. Have you ever seen? This is a strange place to pull this quote from, but have you ever seen the movie Contact?
No, but I know.
So, it's a space movie with maybe aliens that Carl Sagan wrote. And there's a moment in that where they're talking about building the artifact, and a guy says, "Why buy one when you can buy it twice for twice the price?" And I think of that when I look at this, because it's like, why have one Spider-Man game when you can have half of a Spider-Man game for double the money?
For like, the same, yeah. Yeah, so again, like in terms of leaks, continuing that, the Sony or PlayStation leaks include details that Sony wants to bump things up to at least 80 to 100 from 2027 on. That was more internal. And I mean, is it even remotely surprising? If anything, I'd say the timeline, of is it's like, yeah, the timeline would probably be the most surprising. It's like, of course we wanted to get to that point, but getting there in, and basically the tail end of this generation, as opposed to like moving firmly into the next, is a wild ask. That's gonna be real fun, of course, to see in Canadian conversion as we get to watch the limited editions that are already like 120 or whatever now. That just becomes the standard fare fucking price on things. That's Woolie, you've worked in the games business and you've heard these people say these things, and I'm just thinking about like, we sold 18 million copies of Spider-Man at $70 and whatever, and we're not broken even yet. By the way, that was the big takeaway, is that Spider-Man 2 has not broken even yet, despite selling like a shit zillion copies. Well, what if we got the exact same amount of people to buy the game for $20 more? Yeah. They're gonna do it. They're not gonna do it. They're just not. Can we just find the graph that Sony puts up and then just get the like projected wage increase over the last century and just drop it on top of it? and just look at the lines and see the funny shapes that they make when they sit next to each other. I was really thrilled by the way that this week's stories panned out, because like my takeaway from this week is that waiting over a year to buy Midnight Suns with all its DLC for $30 was the best thing that happened to me playing games over the past 2 weeks. Because that's what I find to be the value of Midnight Suns. Steam sale diving. And, bro, there are sales will always remain. Okay, so like we're watching a bunch of studios disintegrate. You probably have it on there with Versus Evil. Do you have that on there? Okay, so Versus Evil is a publishing arm that's done a lot of CRPGs. Fucking like 2 days ago. No, sorry, on the 23rd, they all got laid off. Oh, the Pillars publisher. Yeah, the 23rd of fucking December, they laid off like 1,100 people because they, for one, Versus Evil won a lawsuit against their parent company. Tiny Builds?
they won a lawsuit against Tiny Build saying, hey, you actually never paid us for a bunch of shit. And then Tiny Build was like, well, this publishing arm never makes the numbers that we expect to see, so goodbye. And it's like, the numbers that companies expect to see are the ones that are based off of like the pandemic lockdown video game sales. You know, the one where people were forced to stay inside their house and play video games by law?
Man.
Nothing's going to compete with that.
Like, what? There's something extra weird about a lawsuit involving Tiny Build in particular, because they still have that fucking no time to explain guy on the logo, giving the impression that it's this super tiny little Newgrounds game office, you know, but they have the little guy. So they're like anything they publish must be super tiny too, and it's not. It's Tiny Builds, tiny games, tiny little office for tiny things. Like, it just gives off that fucking impression. Like, Jesus Christ, man. Well, that's fucking garbage.
So I got to see a variation of this. There was a gentleman who works at New Blood. I forget which one. Who made Iron Lung? Was it one of the Davids? Someone in the chat will let me know. But the guy who made Iron Lung went on to the social media and was like, I'm raising the price. It's David. Is it? Yeah. Well, which David? Szymanski? Okay, Szymanski. So David Szymanski went on the Twitter and was like, I am raising the price of Iron Lung to $8. And people started getting all shitty. He's like, you're just doing this for the money. And then he made a big thread that's like, yes.
Mm-hmm.
I'm doing it for the money.
Mm-hmm.
I think Iron Lung is really good, and I want more money. So I raised the price of the game that I
made. Correct.
And it's great. And then he later pointed out that, like, he agrees with his decision, but sales did decrease when he increased the price by $1 or $2, because people have buying thresholds. People will all buy different things at different thresholds. Like, we saw it happen with movies. Like, oh, the movie industry is dying. Like, no, people just don't. People can't casually walk to some piece of shit movie on Wednesday because going to the movies costs $400.
But you see, that's why the move is to release the game at $8 and then just have it on sale for the entire time of that launch window until you pull it back to the original price that it was $7.99 to begin with, right? That's where David messed up. He should have just had it launch at $7.99 and then put a fucking bullshit sale on. Yeah.